They have a combined 12 years in the National Football League. They combined for 65 career sacks, 232 tackles, 1 Pro Bowl selection, and 1 Employee of the Month award.
That's just a straight shooter with upper management written all over him.
It's Train and Grose on the All AZ Podcast Network.
Welcome in episode 68, Train and Grose. Bertrand Berry, Mike Grose, and Sean Crespin. This is the very serious podcast every week. Fellas, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, bro. It's good to see you. I'm in Houston right now, back home in H-Town. Go Astros. I don't need to hear anybody talking anything else because any smack talk about my Stros might get you shot. You know what I mean? I'm just saying.
Got nothing to say. They're actually here, aren't they? Did I see that?
They are playing the Diamondbacks. They won the first one, and I think they're playing as we speak.
Shout out to our good friend Vince Marotta and his crew on their morning show. They did a poll about the Diamondbacks, and after they had won the opening game, and I forget exactly the wording of it, but something to the effect the last choice was, "There's nothing you can say to make me care about this baseball team," when talking about the Diamondbacks. And I think that's where a lot of Arizonans are as the 2022 Major League Baseball season kicks off, but not Houston Astro fans, one of the favorites in Major League Baseball this year. But it is episode number 68 of Train and Grose. Follow us on Twitter at Train and Grose. All right, here we go. 68 B-Train. I'm going to throw 4 names at you.
All right.
Will Shields.
Oh,
Kevin Mawe. Russ Grimm. And L.C. Greenwood. Those are your 4 names.
Wow.
3 of those 4
I think those are all Hall of
Fame.
Famers, if I'm not mistaken. Or about to be.
3 of the 4 are. 3 of the 4 are. One of those men is not in the Hall of Fame. And I don't know if you or Sean want to take a guess on that one. I was shocked, and I would not have gotten it right.
Kevin Mawe?
L.C. Greenwood.
L.C. Greenwood is not in the Hall of Fame.
Not according to my notes.
That is a sham, a travesty, and a mockery, a Travis sham mockery.
Yeah, I was shocked by that. Part of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you Google L.C. Greenwood, there's a picture of him almost always next to Joe Green.
Mean Joe Green.
I mean,
the Steel Curtain.
You know,
I mean, how could you not have one of the members of the Steel Curtain not in the Hall of Fame? Are you kidding me?
And L.C. Greenwood passed away in 2013. And, you know, I know NFL, all sports have a way to take care of their veterans, their old-time committee, whatever each sport is. I have a feeling that L.C. Greenwood will eventually make it to the Hall of Fame by some way, shape, or form. The man won't have had the opportunity to appreciate it. And that, to me, that's
a shame.
I don't get it.
That's a shame.
You played against, we talked about Kevin Mawe with his time here at ASU. You played against him?
Yes, I did. I played against him with the Jets and the Tennessee Titans. I played against Will Shields. He was a division opponent when I was in Denver with the Broncos and he was in Kansas City. Absolutely.
Those two were the Hall of Fame.
Both of those guys were intense individuals. Oh, they're very intense individuals, Mike. Kevin Mawe was one of the dirtiest players ever, but it didn't take away from his ability. He was still a very skilled center, but he was a dirty son of a, you know what I'm saying.
What about Will Shields, B-Train?
Will Shields he was a smart guy. He was a guy that was very intellectual. He knew all of the calls. Obviously, as offensive linemen, don't get the credit for how smart they are. Those are all very smart individuals, and Will Shields definitely fit that role of a guy that's a bruiser. He was big, he was strong, he was powerful, but he was so much more a technician and a guy that would beat you with his brain as opposed to just his brawn. And I had a lot of respect for him. I didn't like him very much because he was a division rival, as I stated, when I was with the Broncos, but you always had that respect for him, knowing that when you played him, you better bring your A game because he will embarrass you if you don't.
Well, then Russ Grimm was here, I think. I mean, yeah, he was here while you played.
Yeah, he was the coach while I was here with the Cardinals with Coach Wisenhunt's staff, and you know he and Wiz were both overlooked by Mike Tomlin to get that job. He, like Coach Wisenhunt, thought that they would be in line to get that job with Pittsburgh, and it turned out great for Arizona as we were able to make that run. And unfortunately, we lost to the very same team. And but he was always a laid back dude. He always rode his Harley to practice, and he was one of the original Hogs with the Washington Commanders formerly, and you had a lot of respect for him, and he knew what he was doing. The offensive line got better instantly when he took over, and for that I'll always have a tip of the cap for Russ Grimm, because everywhere he went, offensive linemen got better.
Yeah, when I know we've talked about that on our radio show that we had back in the day, and I don't know that it's come up on the podcast. And I, ask my kids, I repeat myself a lot, but I always go back to the year you guys made the Super Bowl, and you look at that offensive line, because there was a lot of offensive talent, a lot of offensive weapons on that team. But I think that offensive line was, I don't want to say underrated, but maybe underappreciated. And you probably couldn't pick them out of a lineup right now if they walked in the room. Most, except for the hardcore Cardinals fan, couldn't name the 5 tackle to tackle. But they didn't miss a game, and they played to the point where Kurt Warner and that offense got stuff done, and you guys went all the way to the Super Bowl behind them.
I really enjoyed that year, and I had a lot of respect for those guys, and I'm gonna make sure that I give those guys each their credit. Mike Gandy, which was a teammate of mine at Notre Dame. You had Deuce Latouille, you had Lyle Sindeline, you had Levi Brown, and you also, God, who am I missing? Shoot. Oh, my goodness. Help me out, Mike. Who am I missing? Lyle Sindeline and
Levi Brown, Deuce Latouille, Lyle Sindeline, Reggie Wells, and Mike Gandy.
Reggie Wells. I can't believe I forgot Reggie Wells. Man, my man Reggie. Big shout out to Reggie Wells. But, yeah, those guys were a cohesive group. They loved playing with one another. They were very tight. They did a lot of things together. And, Mike, I've always said, you show me a team that makes a run in January and February, and I'll show you a team that is predominantly healthy and a team that has that core 5 guys up front together for the entire season.
Yeah, absolutely. Relatively young group and didn't miss games. They showed up every week. And, you talk about what it takes to win in professional sports. There's skill. There's all the things that go into it. Luck is a big part of it. And I'm not saying when you're a professional athlete but to stay healthy throughout the course of a 16-game NFL season, a certain amount of luck has to factor into that.
It always does, Mike. And in order to be able to go on that run, you have to be healthy, Mike. And being healthy is all about luck, because we know that it's a contact sport, it's a violent sport, and things can happen even if you take every precaution. I mean, there really isn't a lot of precautions you could take. I mean, you can get your body as finely tuned as you can get it going into the regular season and hope that it maintains and nothing breaks down. But we all know that it's a game of attrition, and the teams that are able to stay relatively healthy are the ones that are able to play in well into January, and if they have a chance to play in that final game in early to mid-February.
All right, looking at the calendar, it's mid-April. NBA playoffs got underway last night. We're recording this on a Wednesday right after the first set of play-in games, where you saw the Brooklyn Nets beat the Cavaliers, and the Timberwolves, the mighty, mighty Timberwolves, dispatched the Clippers. And so those two teams advance. Year 2 of this play-in setup, you still loving it? You still a fan? Did you watch the games last night? I know you're traveling.
I did watch the games. I watched Brooklyn, and I watched Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving put on a show last night. They were absolutely sensational, and what they were able to do. I don't know how long they're going to be able to sustain that, because there isn't a lot of help outside of those two. Yes, you've got Seth Curry and a couple other guys, Bruce Brown, who's able to make some contributions here and there. But when you start thinking about that Eastern Conference, it is loaded with a lot of, top to bottom, good teams, good, solid, deep teams that even though the depth won't play as much of a role because the game slows down and the rotation gets shorter, I still think that they're going to have a lot of trouble with the Milwaukees, the Miami Heats, the Boston Celtics, and the Philadelphia 76ers, that's going to be one heck of a gauntlet to have to get through in order to play late into June for a chance to win an NBA championship.
The Suns, they sit and wait, B-Train, and they'll await. It looks like the loser, I'm going to see if I get this right, San Antonio and New Orleans are playing tonight. One of those teams will advance with a win. The loser will go play the Clippers on Friday night. And then starting up on Sunday, the Suns will await the winner of that game Friday night at the I don't even know what it is now. It used to be the Staples Center in Los Angeles. The series set to run from April 17th to April 30th.
Crypto.com, crypto arena.
Thank you very much. But in reality, this is going to be short and sweet, 4-game. They'll be done in a week, I think, Sunday to Sunday. The Suns, whoever it is, Suns will take care of that in short order.
Mike, I truly believe that this is Chris Paul's best opportunity and final opportunity to win a championship. If it doesn't happen this year, with everything that has happened the last 2 years, the fact that they've had a nice run and to get to the finals was unbelievable last year. But let's face it, even though Chris Paul is still playing at the top of his game, he's going to be 37 pretty soon, if he's not already 37. And when you start thinking about 37, 38-year-olds playing a game with 20-year-olds, something's got to give. And at some point, if they're not able to put this thing together and win a title, which, it's very conceivable they can get back to the finals now, whether they can beat that Eastern Conference champion, that remains to be seen. But I really believe for Chris Paul, this is his best and last opportunity to win an NBA championship.
You look at the Western Conference and you mentioned, what awaits the Phoenix Suns as they move forward. And I think people are looking at the postseason matchups and where these teams shake out a little bit differently now than when you and I talked. And I know we said, look, we're just teeing it up. We're waiting for a 1-2 matchup between the Suns and the Warriors, and everything else is just for show at this point. And you look at it, the Warriors, they're not even number 2. They finished in the number 3 spot. They've got a first-round matchup against the Nuggets. You've got Memphis sliding in the second spot, a really intriguing team, but a very young team, and kind of hitting the rarefied air of the NBA elite for the first time. So we'll see what happens with them. They've got Minnesota, who took care of the Clippers last night. And then finally, you've got a 4-5 matchup, which to me in the opening round is the most intriguing of the matchups in the West, the Mavericks and the Jazz. The Jazz fell all the way out to 5th. So that means they don't have home court advantage in the opening round after finishing so strong a year ago.
It's going to be interesting to see. I really think that this is the more top-heavy conference. I think if you are the Suns, if you're the Memphis Grizzlies, and if you're the Golden State Warriors, I think they've separated themselves from the other 5 teams in the playoffs, and I think they are clear-cut the favorites. I don't think anybody would be shocked if either of those 3 teams were able to make a run and get to the NBA Finals. But it really is a path that is cleared predominantly for the Phoenix Suns. They've got the favorable matchups all the way to the conference final. If they can get there and take care of their business in the conference final, then you'll see this team able to get back to the NBA Finals with a chance to exercise the demons of last year in Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks.
Again, we're recording this on Wednesday. The late game for the Western Conference play-in is San Antonio, New Orleans. And apparently New Orleans will be at full strength. And I don't even know what I think about that. Zion Williamson, we talked about this. Does it matter? Does it make you want to watch more? I don't even know. And we talked about Willie Green, who did such a nice job this year with New Orleans. I view Zion at this point as a distraction. Like, you sit out, you're on, people find you on social media doing stuff, and then all of a sudden you're healthy enough just to roll in and show up for the playoffs. I think it's more of a distraction than anything else for New Orleans.
Okay, so, Mike, I agree with you, but then I think a lot of people on the flip side, they look at the Ben Simmons situation with the Brooklyn Nets a little bit differently. But in reality, they're really the same thing. Neither one has played all year. Neither one has contributed at all on the court. Now, granted, Zion is coming off a little more of a history of being injury-prone than Ben Simmons, but for whatever reason, both of these guys are damaged goods at this point. And however they look coming back into the fray, if you will, for this season, I don't think you're going to see the best of either of those guys. And I think for Zion Williamson, he's out of sight, out of mind. And I think a lot of can be said too for Ben Simmons, even though he's got a lot of attention through the media with the, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? I want out of Philadelphia. I don't want to play with Joel Embiid. And now I have a back situation, even though I haven't played. There's a lot of things going on with Ben Simmons, but both of these young men are really in the same situation, and you don't really expect much out of either of them once the playoffs start and once they get back on the court.
Meanwhile, in the Eastern Conference, Miami goes virtually wire to wire, and they come in at your number 1 seed. They've got the winner of the play-in game, so it's an opponent 2 to be determined. Number 2, Boston and Brooklyn, a team we've been talking about. The Bucks, last year's champions, they finish in the 3 slot. They've got the Bulls, who faded a little bit here in the last half because they were up there with Miami for a lot of the season. They couldn't hang on the way the Heat did. And then finally, your 4-5 matchup, Philadelphia and Toronto. Shaq apparently not a fan and not going all in on the Raptors this year. So apparently we should go Sixers according to Shaq.
Mike, it's interesting that you talk about the 76ers and playing with Toronto. This is going to be the one playoff series where you see COVID testing and COVID shots really come into play, because if you remember Matisse Thybulle is a guy that he got the first shot but didn't get the booster shot. So he is ineligible to play in Toronto. And it's a good thing that they have the home court advantage in this series, because if they were to go to a game 7, then you're not going to have the services of Matisse Thybulle, because even though he got the first shot, he didn't get the booster shot. And how in the world, if you're the Philadelphia 76ers and you're Matisse Thybulle, do you not remember to get the second shot? If you're going to get the first one, why wouldn't you get the second one? It makes absolutely no sense. And I know his presence will be missed from a defensive standpoint, because he heads a lot of what they do as far as the perimeter defense for the 76ers.
No, I'm with you on that one. Like I'm all about personal accountability and personal responsibility, whatever that is. But if you're the Sixers, like, I view that as almost like if you've got a player that's on some sort of medication for asthma or heart whatever, you got to check that box, and you got to say, look, hey, we all good here, especially in the Eastern Conference, like you said, knowing that Toronto was a possibility. If you drop one at home, all of a sudden that home court advantage becomes a less and less of a factor. So we'll see how it goes. But the playoffs getting ready to go. I don't know. I mean, we don't do predictions necessarily, but I'll hold that thought and go back to you.
No, so Mike, I just wanted to kind of bring this point up really fast, is that I think even though we've kind of gotten away from COVID talk here, predominantly there hasn't been a lot of it. And since about the NFL started the playoffs, there hadn't really been a lot of COVID talk. I mean, the whole Kyrie situation died down when they were finally allowed to be able to play. But I think quietly there were a lot of teams around the NBA that were kind of hoping that the Toronto Raptors might go away, because they're the team that could expose a lot of these different players that have kind of hid behind Kyrie Irving and let him take the bullets for the entire league by saying, hey, I'm not vaccinated and I'm not going to get vaccinated. Well, there are some guys out there that have the same situation, but yet now when you are having to go to Canada, if you're not vaccinated, you're not allowed to even be in the country. And so I think for Boston, all these teams in the Eastern Conference, they were all kind of, wiping their proverbial brows that they didn't land in that slot where they had to play Toronto, because the 76ers are going to find that not having Thybulle for those 3 games, if it goes 7 indeed, is going to be something that could maybe sway how that series ends up.
Opening round, I'm looking at the TV matchup, or the TV networks, I should say, for the matchups. The Suns overlooked in their opening round by ABC, partly time zone issues, right? Because if you're going to be on ABC, you're going to be playing very early in the day, because they typically get the weekends, get their early games, and then kick everything over to ESPN. But again, they're on TNT and ESPN for the early games. But on the other side, the Bucks, they already know that 2 of their 4 first round games will be on ABC. So we'll see. We talk about Devin Booker. We talk about the respect that the Suns get, and I don't want to go overboard on this because the time zone does really play a factor in this, but overlooked by ABC in the opening round of the playoffs in terms of the exposure on a national level.
Mike, I totally agree with everything you just said, and I wanted to kind of pivot just a little bit and get your thoughts on MVP. I know we talked about it last week, but has your opinion changed at all on who is your favorite after last week? And we saw some last-minute efforts by some of the players. Of course, we talk about Devin Booker not getting mentioned at all, and, of course, Joel Embiid and, the Joker and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Have we gotten fatigue of giving Giannis awards? There's going to be a lot of personal storylines that go into this year's MVP. Has your opinion changed at all?
And for me, it hasn't. But I think for us, it's a proximity bias, right? And, you look at where this team is, what they've done, the remarkable way in which they did it. We talk about the no ego, the no drama, you lose Chris Paul with a hand injury for the latter part of the season. They don't skip a beat. If I had a vote, which I don't, I would be hard pressed not to cast my vote for Devin Booker. When you look at where they're going and what if you believe the trackers, and Sean usually is good at keeping me honest here with some numbers. It looks like Giannis is making a last minute push to get back into that, but is it a repeat? Does Joker get it again? I don't know. Again, from a national standpoint, and I really struggle with that because you hear on the one hand, well, it's a disrespectful thing for the Suns. It's a West Coast bias or an East Coast bias against the West Coast for any teams not named the Los Angeles Lakers. But then to have a player from the Denver Nuggets of all team back to in the conversation again, it kind of washes away all those arguments. Like I can't say, well, Devin Booker didn't give it because they gave it to somebody in the Eastern time zone. Well, no, if it goes to Denver again, that's a hard argument to make. And the Nuggets, what did we say? They finished fourth, right? So I mean, I don't know. It's really strange. They finished sixth. It's really strange to see how this thing is playing out. But however it's playing out, it's not with Devin Booker rising in the conversation nationally.
No, it's not, Mike. And I think that's a shame because we've seen, and we talked about this last week, in years past, it was always the narrative given to the best player on the best team. And the Phoenix Suns are by far and away the best team in all the basketball. They've almost lapped the field, if you will. When you start looking at their record, they're so many games ahead of the Western Conference, and even further ahead of all the teams in the Eastern Conference. And yet here's a guy that was able to still maintain that momentum even when Chris Paul was out. He did everything that's asked when you start talking about meeting the criteria. Was he a superstar? Was he a guy that they could count on when they needed him the most? And was he able to maintain when his cohort was down?
So we'll keep an eye on where Devin Booker shakes out in the MVP race. And then shout out congratulations to Monty Williams. Back-to-back years, he's the National Basketball Coaches Association NBA Coach of the Year. So shout out to your guy, B-Train, Monty Williams. On the other side, I want to do a little something different here, B-Train. I want to talk some media talk. A lot of changes with the players in the NFL, but some shakeups in the play-by-play booth and some recognition for some guys that I know you know. We'll do that next on Train and Grose.
Train and Grose.
Welcome back in, Train and Grose. Bertrand Berry, Mike Grose, Sean Crespin. I'm at my home in Phoenix, B-Train in lovely Houston, Texas. And Sean Crespin holding it down in the East Valley. And B-Train, like I said before the break, want to do a little bit of something different here. We talk a lot about the sports, but a big part of sports is the media that covers the sports. And I sent you a tweet earlier this week, a guy that I know you know very well, and we've had on our podcast and on the radio show, and that's Eric Hansen, who covers the Fighting Irish for the South Bend Tribune. He was inducted into the Sports Writers Hall of Fame back there in Indiana. And like I said, I don't know him well. We had him on our radio show numerous times. We've had him on this podcast at least once that I can remember. But I'm going to tell a story real quick and let you give your thoughts of Eric Hansen. I remember one time we reached out and said, hey, you want to join us? I think it was for the podcast. And he's like, I'm getting ready to go to the concert over at the stadium in South Bend. But for B-Train, I'll do it. And so before he went to the concert at South Bend, whatever it was, he joined us and taped a segment for the podcast. And I know the feeling as far as you're concerned when it goes to Eric Hansen is mutual in terms of, what your working relationship when you played there for the Fighting Irish.
Just a consummate professional, a guy that would always point us or paint us in a great light as far as the athletes were concerned. And I always took it upon myself to never say no. If he had a few questions, I would always try to answer. And I think he appreciated that. And we maintained that relationship well past my Notre Dame playing days. And we bounced thoughts on, about our alma mater and my alma mater, back and forth and all that kind of good stuff. And so he was always gracious with his time and just a real professional, a great guy and the ultimate professional. And I think that's one of the biggest compliments you can pay a man like Eric Hansen in that field in which he works. And the fact that he's able to always be professional, very deserving, and, tip of the hat to Eric Hansen.
Well, and I remember too, when we talked about the radio show that you and I did, a guy that was a frequent contributor was Jim Trotter. And the reason he never said no to us, and I don't think he ever did, ever. And we got him in some tough times for him. And, the reason, and he told that story on air, was, you were one of the guys that treated him fairly. You knew he had a job to do and he was doing his job covering you. And you always were respectful and gave him the time he needed when he was breaking in. And people remember that. People remember how they're treated. And, I know the media can be a tough job. You especially, if you're standing in front of the media when they got the recorders in front of your face and the cameras on after a loss. I mean, I'm sure it's not the first thing on your list you want to do, but understanding that those guys have a job to do. And in part, professional athletes and college athletes get that exposure from these guys that are giving them the coverage.
You just be a professional. That's the one thing that I was always taught from the very first moment I stepped on campus at Notre Dame is always be a professional. You're always in control of your answers. And anytime that you treat them poorly, it's never going to reflect good on you. So I always saw it as an opportunity to build a brand, to build a relationship, build a reputation. And I tried to take as much from them as they took from me. And it was a beautiful relationship indeed. And I've had many of friends maintained over time because of the fact that we both understood that we needed each other in order to really get what we needed.
Did they train you or give you exposure, whatever the right word was, when you were at Notre Dame, the media relations department there, like, media 101, like, here's how we want you guys to handle your business in front of the media? Did they do that, or did they just turn you loose as college football players and hopefully get a good turnout?
No, they gave us a little bit of training, but really it just comes down to who are you as a person. And I just always believed in treating people the way that you want to be treated. And I wouldn't want somebody to blow me off if I had a question for them. So I never blew off a reporter that was out there doing his job and busting his hump trying to get a story. Now, I wasn't going to help anybody slander my name, but if it was an honest question and one that I felt one that deserved an honest answer, then, hey, it's part of the job. Answering questions for the media is just as important as going out there and running those extra sprints after practice, because all of these things are going to ultimately help your career. And I was fortunate enough, I understood it, and I took full advantage.
Well, and the story came out of one of your favorite schools, the University of Texas, where Steve Sarkisian kind of put one of his players on the sideline figuratively and said, we're going to keep him out of the media for a while. And Moro Ojomo, a kid who, this is an older player, he's been in this program for 6 years now. And, he was calling some dudes out down there in Austin saying, hey, look, we got guys that are out about, chasing girls after practice, about drinking beer after practice, about living the good life in college. and they're not about hitting the weight room. They're not about doing the things that it takes to win at big time college football. They're young, et cetera. So he was just speaking out, and I think, maybe trying to hold some guys accountable publicly. Coach Sarkisian didn't take it that way and didn't want him going to the media and said, look, we're going to put him on the sideline for a while. We take care of our business in-house. We don't air our dirty laundry in public.
That's kind of a tough stance for Coach Sarkisian to take. And as a guy that we came out together, we ran the Hula Bowl together, Steve and I. That's given what the track record has been with Steve. I'll just leave it right there. That's a tough stance for him to take. I'll just say that and move on.
Yeah, and I at some point, go and take Coach out of it for a minute. He didn't call anybody out. The player didn't call anybody out by name. Didn't. It wasn't profane. It was just him sitting down, giving his observations. What does Texas have to do to get to the next level? And I think anybody who's watched Texas football the last couple of years or more, this is a program that isn't living up to its full potential. And to have a young man that has the confidence to get out there in front of it and call his teammates out in a way that he did, I thought it was kind of refreshing, actually.
That's the exact word I was going to use, Mike. You took the word right out of my mouth. And all the time they want athletes to be honest. And then once you get honesty, then there's I don't know if I really wanted you to be that honest. No, you either want the athletes to be honest and say exactly what's on their mind, or you want them to give polished answers that they've been given by somebody else. And I think you can't want honest answers and then cringe when you hear it. I mean, you have to be able to take that honest answer for what it's worth. And if that's what his truth was, then you report on it and you call it like you see it.
Absolutely. All right. You talk about the big contracts being handed out on the football field, big contracts being handed out in the broadcast booth as well. Joe Buck and Troy Aikman moved from Fox over to ESPN. Can that $100 million investment save Monday Night Football? I mean, it struggled a little bit. Let's be honest. Growing up, it was, we remember it when it was the only thing on TV before ESPN, when it was on ABC, and it was Monday nights, right? I don't know. I like Joe Buck. I know a lot of people don't. I think he works well with Troy Aikman, but Monday Night Football's got a lot of headwinds right now.
Mike, Monday Night Football has lost its place in the annals of American sports. It used to be right up there with the Super Bowl or the World Series or the NBA Finals, as far as if you could go on there and be successful, then it was really going to elevate your career and elevate your personal brand. I think Sunday Night Football has really taken that moniker over from Monday Night Football, and you've seen them have to move it to ESPN. It used to be ABC, and now you talk about the announcers. They've tinkered with that lineup at least for the last 2 decades with guys coming in and out, trying to find that magic again, and they've just never been able to replace the Howard Cosell's, the Dandy Don Merediths, and the like. And that was a magical group, those individuals, and you just can't recreate that magic. And as hard as they've tried, I think they've come up short. And who knows? Maybe Joe Buck and Troy can. They've got a lot of cachet. They've earned it during their time with Fox, but I think it's more of the product itself. I think it's more Monday Night Football than it is the individuals that are calling the game. I just think on a Monday night, there's just more options, more things to look at other than Monday Night Football.
Yeah. Well, and there was a lot of attention given to the money that was given to these two guys. And, at some point, it becomes monopoly money, right? You're just talking about numbers. But I will say that, the people that are making decisions behind the scenes to give contracts out like this, they're not football fans. They're not, they are accountants, they're business people. And so there's a calculation in there that says, look, we've got a big investment that we pay to the NFL. This might be the ticket to save this, or at least raise the numbers to the point where we're making money. But I looked up the numbers. ESPN owned by Disney. Disney made like $68 billion last year. Smart people are running this company. So we'll see what happens. And like I said, I I don't mind Joe Buck. I know there's a lot of people out there that are not Joe Buck fans. I think he and Troy work pretty well together.
Yeah, I can take or leave Joe Buck. I don't get as offended by his voice as some people that I know. I mean, some people just can't stand the sound of his voice. They just mute the broadcast when he is calling the game, and whether it's baseball or football. And I don't have that much vitriol towards anybody in life to where I just can't stand. Well, I'll take that back. There are a few people I can't stand the sound of their voice, but he's not one of them. I'm not overly a fan of his, but his voice doesn't make my the hairs on the back of my neck stand up.
Meanwhile, Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, they will be calling Thursday Night Football on Amazon of all places. I'm interested to see how that goes. There was a lot of speculation that Al Michaels was getting ready to retire, but he hangs in there. And Kirk Herbstreit strikes a deal where he's able to work for Amazon and call NFL games on Thursday night and still do his full complement of work for ESPN on the college side. So fear not, if you're a Kirk Herbstreit fan, you don't lose him in the college game. But I'll be interested to see how Kirk Herbstreit and Al Michaels work together. Two guys that separately, when they do their things with their previous partners, I actually like.
Yeah, one thing about Kirk Herbstreit, he's going to be tied, boss, Tied, come Sunday, because that's a lot of work to get ready for Thursday Night Football, then turn right around and travel to wherever he has to go for college game day or whatever they call it now in college, and maybe call a game as well. That's a lot of traveling. That's a lot of names to keep in your head and being on twice a week. That's a lot of work. So I know his bank account is going to look really nice, but boy, I know from a physical standpoint, he's not going to be upset when the seasons are over, because then he'll finally be able to get that much needed deep sleep that he had been craving for the last 6 months.
Well, and the travel that goes into it, like, to your point, the preparation, the travel, because Thursday night you're playing all around the country. I'm sure there's private jets involved, and that's all fine and good, but the travel is going to take it out of you over the course of a long college football season and a 17 to 18-week NFL season. It reminds me of a story back in the day. I think it was a Joe Garagiola story, Joe Garagiola Sr., where, they talked about the travel in professional sports and baseball. And he said he woke up one day, couldn't remember where he was. So he opened up the drawer next to the bed and looked at the phone book and realized he was in Cleveland, because he just couldn't remember, because they travel, you fly around, and you don't know where you are night after night. And, we'll see. And then finally, that means that Sunday Night Football, which really is the marquee game of the week now in terms of how things line up, it's Mike Tirico paired up with Chris Collinsworth on NBC. And I'm a Mike Tirico fan. I like him. He's a Michigan guy, not Wolverines, but from Michigan. And I like him. I think he does good work.
He really does good work. And I know a lot of people feel the same way about Chris Collinsworth like they do about Joe Buck. They don't like the sound of his voice, but I've never had a problem with Chris Collinsworth. His son does a great job, I think, former Notre Dame Fighting Irishman or an alum, I should say. And I just think over the years, Chris Collinsworth has become synonymous with Sunday Night Football. So I can't even imagine not hearing that voice, as annoying as it may be to some people, on Sunday night. So it's something that, as a sports fan, you just grow accustomed to certain sounds of certain games. You get accustomed to the squeak on the hard court when you're watching basketball. You get accustomed to the grunts and the screaming, if you will, on a football field. And then when you talk about the broadcast, you just get used to hearing certain voices bring the game to you in a way that may quite thought about it.
And real quickly, and I should have maybe brought this up when we were talking earlier about why Devin Booker should be an MVP, but I guess it fits here with the media talk as well. What a great tribute the other night when Devin Booker gave his jersey to Al McCoy after the Suns game, autographed it for him. You talk about what a pro and what a really good man Devin Booker is, to recognize and acknowledge Al McCoy for everything that he's meant to this franchise for so many years. Really just a cool scene at the Footprint Center downtown Phoenix when that happened.
Two classy gentlemen, really showing why they're so beloved here in the Valley. And it just you already knew that these were two quality individuals, and that picture, that still shot that you see of Devin Booker handing that jersey over, and his appreciation for the jersey, it just touches your heart. How can you not love that moment if you're a sports fan, knowing how much it meant to both individuals in that moment? Yeah. So it's they knocked it out of the park with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, on the other side, we have to do it every week. It's the gift that keeps on giving, the NFL. We got some new contracts going on, and guess what? More trouble for the team in Washington. That's coming up next on Train and Grose.
Train and Grose.
Welcome back in Train and Grose.
Can I hit him with it? Can I? For those that are just listening to this portion of the program, when that rejoin started, Grose, I mean, the dance moves and I just.
Is that what we're calling them now? We're calling those dance moves?
I don't know what else to call it. So, Grose, I'll let you take it from there. But I just had to. Yeah. For the folks that weren't watching. Yeah.
Now I know how B-Train feels when you hit him with the wah-wah trombone during the dad jokes.
Which won't
hurts
happen,
my heart,
by the way.
It hurts my heart.
Yeah.
Hey,
I'm offended.
I got to start out with this again because we've talked about this a couple times. But the Washington football team, the Washington Commanders, the Washington Commies, whatever you call it.
Wow. You had to do it. You just had to do it.
At some point.
I know.
I did. At some point, though, the other owners around the NFL have to get tired of the way Daniel Snyder is conducting business with this football team. And now there is a congressional review. And again, I don't want to get into all the government side of it, but the Federal Trade Commission is looking into reports that Daniel Snyder defrauded Washington football season ticket holders, perhaps of at least $5 million over the years, I should say. This is on top of everything else with this team. Daniel Snyder took it over, a lot of ballyhoo, hasn't done a damn thing. And, we talked about it. I mean, this goes back, over 10 years now, B-Train. Never has a guy done so little with so much as Daniel Snyder when you look at what he's done with one of the – previously, it's not anymore because he's ruined that. It was an iconic franchise in the National Football League. Mm-hmm. He's ruined that. He's driven it off the rails. And now the NFL owners get a letter from the House Committee on Oversight and Reform. What is one of the big things that the NFL holds so near and dear? They've got antitrust exemption that allows them to operate. And if you get Congress in your business, looking at your books, that is the last thing that these owners want. And Daniel Snyder just kicked that door open for them.
Mike, this is a guy that was a lifelong fan of this team in Washington. And you would think a guy that loved this team would do more right by it, if you will, for lack of better words. It just seems as if he's taken it and it's just kind of his personal plaything. He's a guy that claims to have been a long-standing fan of this team, and which is why he bought it in the first place. But if you truly love a team, then you don't want to do anything to ruin the reputation of that team. And I just feel like for him, it all seems like lip service, and it's hard to believe anything that the man says because there's usually a contradiction following whatever he says. And for the people that have worked with him, particularly the women, they have not had good experiences. And now you add fraud on top of all of this. This just seems like a very toxic situation for any person to go in and work, women notwithstanding. But I don't understand how he has gotten away with so much in the nation's capital, being a guy that seems to be not who he says he is. I mean, for all the things that he sold that area on as far as being the owner, I don't think he's really delivered on anything that he said he'd do.
Well, and here's the crux of the matter. If you Google the story, you can find this. But essentially, there's a former employee, right? So, we've talked about stories like this. The reports are coming from inside, where he was with this organization for 24 years in a sales and customer executive position. So he wasn't some guy answering the phone. He was a VP in charge of some departments. He said for over 24 years, the team at Snyder's discretion, or at his request, maintained 2 sets of books for their revenues. And they underreported revenue back to the National Football League, which a big part of how the NFL has gotten where it is revenue sharing. So not only are they screwing their fans, they're also screwing the other NFL teams. This, at some point, the owners just got to say, we're done here. You got to go. You do what you got to do. Sell it. I mean, you're going to cash in your big profit, but you got to go.
Does this become like Richardson in Carolina, or you talk about Donald Sterling and with the Clippers, although another sports league? Does this become a situation where, for the betterment of the league, that they basically acquiesce the team and commandeer the team from him?
2 things I will say to that. Yeah, I think you're right that could happen. And I'm going to be really, call it what you will, petty, whatever. I think that the owners might be more upset about this allegation than the allegations of mistreatment of female employees and some of the other things that Daniel Snyder's been accused of, because this actually cost the other owners money. Like, they crossed that line, and this is just another. And protect the shield. You hear it all the time when a player does something bad. Protect the shield. No more DUIs. Protect the shield. What about this? How's this protecting the shield?
At all. I'm with you, Mike. This is a stain on the entire league, and I think the owners, once they realize that they've been duped by this guy from a financial standpoint, that's always the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think there will be change. There will be some sort of fallout from this, and how extensive it is, I'm looking forward to seeing how this thing unfolds.
All right, 2 quarterback stories. One, I think, a good story, and I'm trying to put my Raiders helmet on to do this one. Derek Carr gets an extension and rewarded for his time in Oakland, now Las Vegas. 3-year, $121.5 million deal that includes a no-trade clause and takes him through the 2025 season to lead the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that's deserved. I think it's the right move by the Raiders, and I know Sean Crespin can paint in a little bit more color around this. But here's a guy in Derek Carr that's done so much with a lot of changing or a lot of moving pieces around him. And every week you watch this guy, you never question the effort, you never question the heart, you never question whether or not he's leaving it all on the field when you watch this guy. And I'm not necessarily a Raiders fan, but I think this is a good move, and I'm happy for Derek Carr.
I think it was a necessary move for the Raiders, considering the fact you just brought Davante Adams over. He and Derek Carr are best friends. They are really best friends. They went to school together. They are really BFFs. I mean, if you start talking about relationships, that is going to be one of those that is as real and as authentic as you get. So if you're going to give Davante Adams that money, then how in the world are you going to break up he and his best friend who's been there and done everything that he's done for the Raiders organization? It only makes sense. And I think for Derek Carr, he's learned so much over the years, not only from the Raiders organization, but from his big brother, David. And seeing how David was handled during his time with the Houston Texans and in the league, and how he bounced from team to team, he just looked at that and said, you know what? That's not going to be my story. I'm going to stick with this one team. I'm going to do everything that I can. And I think thus far, I think you would put it incomplete next to the grade of a Derek Carr. You're not going to give him a failing grade. He's been to the playoffs twice. He was only able to participate just last year, the first time he got hurt before they were able to get to the playoffs. So he's really been a guy that I think has done what has been asked of him to do. And giving him this money, I think, sends the message to the entire locker room that, hey, if you do things and you stand up when you need to and get us to a position where we have a chance, then we're going to reward you. And I think it's a great message, not only for himself, but for the rest of his teammates.
And the contract works out, Grose, sorry to cut you out, but the contract actually works out for both parties pretty well, in my opinion. I mean, he has the no-trade clause put in the contract, but the Raiders very easily could move off of him after next year with very, very little dead money on the books for the next 3 years. It's less than $10 million on the books, and it goes down each year, each of the next 3 seasons. So if for whatever reason the marriage with Josh McDaniels and Derek Carr isn't what they think it's going to be, the team could move off him very easily. On the flip side, every year he's on, his cash come June 1 escalates. So, for both parties, it's kind of a good deal, but it's also structured where there's a lot of back money. He said the one thing he wasn't going to do was lose another best friend on the team like Khalil Mack. The last time he signed that big deal, remember, it was the same offseason. Khalil Mack was not able to get his with the Raiders. He said he wasn't going to do that again, so he structured the contract in a very team-friendly way. His cap goes down this year. They're able to move off of him going forward if they need to. There's some very easily restructured portions to this contract if they need to pay Hunter Renfrow, if they need to redo Darren Waller's contract, if they need to redo any of those guys. Josh Jacobs is coming up, right? So it's kind of a win-win for both teams. The numbers look big. If you do just the total number divided by the years, it's over 40 plus, but it's nowhere near that. It's really very team-friendly.
Yeah, and I think in the AFC West this year, all hands on deck is going to be the mantra. So, I think that's to your point, Sean, not having to have anybody move away from that team because of the contract that was given to him was really key. Meanwhile, on the other end of the spectrum, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield doesn't have a home yet. And Baker Mayfield goes on a podcast. We got to get some of these guys on a podcast because it seems like they do podcasts differently than they do radio or TV. They just let it fly on a podcast. And Baker let it fly. And, we were talking about this before we started recording. There's one thing that when you're talking about athletes that kind of rubs me the wrong way. It's when they play the respect card. Like, I'm not getting any respect here. I need respect. You need to give me respect. And Baker Mayfield went down that path, and I'm sorry. I'm not buying it from Baker Mayfield.
Mike, you don't go off the handle until you get the bag. That's the thing that was so curious about the timing of this. Like, you're not signed. You get the bag first, then you go off. You don't jeopardize the bag, Baker. I mean, he's a fellow Texan. I wish I could just talk to him and just be like, hey, bro, calm down before you get that bag, man. You got to play the role. You got to be that model citizen until you get the bag. When you get the bag, then you can say all the things that have been on your mind and on your heart, and just let it fly. But until then, man, you're costing yourself who knows how much by the word when you fly off the handle and no team has showed an interest just yet in making you a player, let alone a starter.
Well, and then, he goes into, I had so many coaches, I had so many general managers and this and that. And that's why I bring him up right on the heels of Derek Carr, because you look at what Derek Carr has gone through. Derek Carr's had it about as bad as if that's bad. Derek Carr's had it as bad as anybody in the NFL in terms of a rotating, line of people around him. The other thing that really cracked me up, it just cracked me up. So then he talks about the fans, and he, for the most part, the fans were respectful, and I remember my time well in Cleveland. But man, some of these fans, I want to roll up into their office and go yell at them while they're working in their cubicles, and I would just love to boo the shit out of them in their cubicles. Was his exact quote. What does that get you, Baker? I mean, and I'm sure, as a professional athlete, you could tell stories about disrespectful fans, but it's part of the territory. People pay their money, they drink their beer, and they're going to stay soft. But for Baker Mayfield to go off, well, yeah, for most part, Cleveland fans were okay, but some of these, I'm going to roll up into their company and start booing them. Yeah, okay, Baker, thank you.
I mean, it's almost like that commercial with Peyton Manning where the roles are reversed. He's cut that meat. It never really works. The court of public opinion is never going to be on your side. Even if you have a point, they're not going to side with you because you are making so much more than they are, and they're actually paying your salary. So you're never going to get the sympathy from other people who are doing the same thing that said fan is doing. So it's a road that he's too long in the tooth to take this kind of stance at this point, and especially when you haven't secured the bag.
And you know where you find sympathy?
In the dictionary between spit and syphilis.
I know that. All right. We always say it every week. This is just a lead up to our next segment. We got Pump the Brakes, and then B-Train gets a chance to redeem himself in Sean Crespin's eye with dad jokes. That's coming up next on Train and Grose. Welcome back in Train and Grose. Is this what you were listening to on the plane over to Houston, B-Train?
No, not quite. I was listening to a little bit of jazz, and I was actually reading. So it was quite the experience. The plane ride went much faster as I was reading, so it was cool.
What were you reading?
That's the truth.
It's a book called Tender Lions. Story about a guy and his dad and the relationship. It's a good read. I mean, it's an easy read, and I think that it's something that I would highly recommend to anybody.
All right. There we go. Sean Crespin.
Hey, you guys know how this segment works. I'm going to give you some topics, some statements, things people are talking about in the world of sports. Tell me if you're pumping the brakes on it or if you're rolling with it. So we'll start in the NBA. Los Angeles Lakers making a change at head coach. So pump the brakes or not, the pressure to win despite missing the playoffs 7 of the last 9 years, the front office structure that is an absolute circus at times. The Lakers head coaching job is not what you would call a great job these days. Pump the brakes or not?
No, I'm not pumping the brakes. It's a mess. And it starts with LeBron James, and it trickles up, if you will, to the general manager, and you think about the owner. Who's in charge? Because there's so many pots, there's so many hands in the so many cooks in the kitchen. You don't know who is the real leader. And so the fact that LeBron is going to be who he is, he's not going to listen to just anybody. They're going to have to run every decision through him as long as he's on the roster. This is a situation where you've got 3 guys that are advanced in their career, and they just don't play well together. So you can't get off their contracts. I just don't see this being a desirable situation for anybody.
100% agree. Not pumping the brakes at all. When I think of the 2021-2022 Lakers, the first thing that I think of when you ask me what's the problem was not Frank Vogel. Frank Vogel wasn't in the top 5 of what the problem is with the Los Angeles Lakers. Here's a guy that won 54% of his games, won a championship in the bubble a couple years ago. Frank Vogel is not the problem with the Los Angeles Lakers. And I don't know who you're going to get to coach the Lakers to deal with all the things that are going on. As B-Train said, it's a mess from the top or from the bottom up, if you look at it that way. Ownership, the front office, LeBron, AD. I mean, you talk about the older guys and their contracts, and you got a superstar who will not or cannot get himself healthy. And so you got all kinds of problems, and none of it is on the head coach. Bunch of dogs.
I was gonna say, is Beans cool with it? Can we move on to the next one? You want to chime in? Beans over there?
Beans is like leave Frank Vogel alone. Get Frank Vogel's name out of your mouth.
Question 2 to the National Football League. You guys were talking about Baker Mayfield last segment, as a matter of fact, and his comments towards fans and his time in Cleveland and whatnot. But there's a chance he may still be technically on the Cleveland roster next year. Pump the brakes or not, Baker Mayfield is not enough of an upgrade to trade for over Davis Mills, Marcus Mariota, Sam Darnold, Jameis Winston, or Drew Lock. Pump the brakes or not?
Go ahead, Mike.
No, I'm not pumping the brakes at all on that. Like, if I'm a GM and I need a quarterback, I'm not giving up a low end pick for Baker Mayfield at this point. And to B Train's point, after to the podcast interview, like, this guy is not helping himself. This guy is not helping himself at all. So I might roll the dice on Baker Mayfield if he suddenly gets cut by the Cleveland Browns and becomes available through free agency. But I am not trading a draft pick for Baker Mayfield at this point. If I'm Seattle, for example, no way. Let me clear
right before you jump in, B-Train. So I picked those quarterbacks because I went through the National Football League while you guys were talking last segment, and those seem like the quarterback-needy teams at this point, right? So the Texans like what they saw in Davis Mills last year, but are they really sold on him? Marcus Mariota was signed by the Falcons. There's a lot of question marks there. Can he be, turning his career back around? Sam Darnold, the Panthers felt like they were done with him last year, right? Jameis Winston is now the starting quarterback with the Saints, or scheduled to be, and then you got Drew Lock with Seattle, who was part of that Russell Wilson trade. So right now, those are the starting quarterbacks with those particular teams. Those are the needy quarterback teams right now. Is he enough of an upgrade where you're going to go, you know what, we'll go ahead and trade, opposed to rolling with those 5 quarterbacks?
The only situation that I see him being an upgrade would probably be Seattle. But even then, with everything that he said and he's done since the end of the season, I wouldn't take a ham sandwich for Baker Mayfield.
What kind of ham?
I really wouldn't, because pressed ham, sandwich meat ham. I don't care what kind of ham. You can have you can have pineapples on the ham. Ooh. And I'm still not trading with the Cleveland Browns for Baker Mayfield. It doesn't make any sense. The guy is damaged goods, and he's really not that great of a quarterback. Yes, he's done some things, but overall, when you get a mouthy guy that's limited in his ability, that's a recipe for mediocrity at best.
Grose, can you at least put pineapple on ham if it's on a sandwich? Is that okay? Or are we pumping the brakes on that too? I know you're really against it on Pete. Pumping the brakes on it. Okay.
We are pumping the brakes on that. That is no.
All right, next one. So talk about damaged goods in the National Football League. The USFL is set to start their inaugural season this weekend. I don't know if you saw that. The XFL, set to launch in 2023, announced this week a partnership with the NFL Alumni Academy. That's a group that provides training and conditioning work to unemployed players. They try to help create a pool for NFL teams who need injury replacements throughout the year and so forth. But they're going to work with the XFL starting next year. So pump the brakes or not, there is a place for minor league football in America.
Pump the brakes.
Even though the was it the AZ, what was it, the one that went out right when COVID hit, actually had a lot of momentum. The XFL had a lot of momentum before COVID hit. You still say no?
It was the Atlanta or the Allied Alliance.
Yeah, Alliance of American Football.
Yeah, no. Listen, I understand that people have an appetite for football, and they think they want to see it all year, but they've tried this over and over and over again, and people just don't tune in enough. They think that it's cool that the first week there's always great ratings, but then once you see the level of play, it's just like AAA baseball or AA baseball. Nobody wants to see that on TV. You barely want to see the majors on TV. So when you start talking about football, you don't want to see the G League on TV. You don't tune into the NBA TV to watch the G League. They're not going to tune in March or April or May to watch the lower level professionals go out there and try to win a spot on the NFL roster.
Completely agree. And you look at the USFL, what they're trying to do with the rebranding or relaunching of this. It's a made-for-TV league, and they're just trying to capture some TV ratings, and that's it. I mean, all the games are being played in Birmingham, so you've got Houston playing Michigan in Birmingham. Like, they're not even trying to generate fans to buy tickets to come out to the games. And B-Train's exactly right. If the way you set the question up, Sean, is if I thought that they were trying to run it as a true minor league, then yeah, that'd be fine. But, for me to say that USFL is bought and paid for by Fox so they can fill their weekend TV programming and try to pass it off as something more than minor league football, I think is disingenuous on their part. Treat it like a minor league and Put it behind the scenes. Put the games on the NFL Network. Put them in cities that don't already have football franchises. Fine. But what they're trying to do now is not going to work. It hasn't worked in the past, and it's not going to work now.
All right, last one before we get to some pop culture and then pass it off to B-Train for the dad joke of the week. Clayton Kershaw, did you guys see his stat line today by any chance? 13 strikeouts facing 21 batters. He was perfect through 7 innings before the Dodgers pulled him after 80 pitches. Pump the brakes or not, hard pitch counts in Major League Baseball.
Pump the brakes. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm the most knowledgeable when it comes to this, but I know when a guy is cooking and dealing, you don't take him out. You give him a chance to go and finish what he started. Now, if he gets a hit, if somebody touches him up a little bit and you see a pattern develop over a course of a few batters, then yeah, you get him out of there. But for Clayton Kershaw, this isn't a guy that is right in the middle of his prime. This is a guy that's towards the end. The end is closer than the beginning for Clayton Kershaw. And so if he's dealing like this on a particular day, you got to give him the respect to let him at least attempt to finish it out and see if he can pull it off. And those things don't happen very often. And I think for the Dodgers, yeah, you got a long game in mind and you want to save him in April as opposed to exposing him to long-term injury. But man, a perfect game, you got to give him more of a chance than that.
Grose, before you jump in, let me give you a couple of comments from post-game today. So Dave Roberts apparently consulted Kershaw after the 6th, and Kershaw told him, give me one more, get me out at 85 pitches. So Kershaw apparently told Roberts that. Now, after the game, Kershaw said it was the right decision. Blame it on the lockout. Blame it on my not picking up a ball for 3 months during the offseason. So he himself apparently was a little bit skeptical about going the full way due to the fact that he hadn't had the proper time to warm up that arm like you typically would. But, I mean, how often are you through 7 and you're perfect in Major League Baseball?
Well, yeah, I get all of that. And from a fan standpoint and from a Major League Baseball standpoint, that's the story, right? Like you're doing that and the pitch count is the key. I'm going to tell you what, if the Dodgers, like everybody expects, are making a run deep in the postseason, and unlike the previous years, they have a healthy Clayton Kershaw in September and October, they're going to forget what happened in April. I mean, here's a guy that came back. Look, nobody's going to shed any tears for Clayton Kershaw, a guy who's made over $250 million in his career. But he came back on a 1-year deal because he has been unable to stay healthy. And before you read that comment, I was not aware of that, but my comment was going to be, just as long as there's consultation between the player and the manager on how this was going to go, I don't like it, but I understand it. If it was a decision that was dictated by somebody outside of the player-manager relationship, meaning somebody in the front office, somebody sitting back in Dodger Stadium, just pulling the strings behind the scenes, then I got more of an issue with it. The other thing, and I don't know what the weather was today, but I believe that game was in Minneapolis. They don't play in the Dome anymore. And I'm sure the weather in April in Minneapolis wasn't ideal for a guy who's had injury problems over the years. Like I said, I don't like it. And from a baseball standpoint, it sucks because this is a sport that needs as many eyes on as it can. But from a player-manager standpoint, if they're good with it, who am I to argue?
And finally, we wrap it up with pop culture like we always do. Easter coming up this Sunday. I love my polls, right? A recent poll asked people about their candy intake during this particular holiday and some of the traditions. But the one that stood out to me, 11% of people still get Easter baskets as adults. Pump the brakes or not, the adult Easter basket.
Pump the brakes.
All right.
What are we doing? You can go to any store and you can buy whatever candy you want.
Yep.
If you're not going to tell me you're out there doing the Easter egg hunt with the kids, nobody's buying that, and nobody's going to give you cool points for going out there and stealing those eggs from those little children. So, no, stop it with the adult Easter basket. Stop it.
11%, Grose.
I'm right there with B-Train, though. While B-Train was talking, I looked it up on my phone real quick, and there's an article right here, thoughtful adult Easter basket ideas.
Okay.
So I've got a list here.
What do you got?
That if we were going to be together, recording this at train station instead of doing it remotely, I could bring us an Easter basket and put some flowers in it. I could put some coffee cups, your favorite drinks.
That'd be nice.
Lotion, perhaps. B-Train's very thoughtful with the candles. I could give B-Train an Easter basket with a candle in it.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Cressman, I could give you a half dozen apple fritters. So there's all kinds of things. For the friends who celebrate 420, we got some CBG cartridges I could put in there. I got all kinds of ideas right here in this article. So apparently there is more to it than this 11% number would want us to believe.
11% say they still do the Easter basket as adults. This article also goes on, speaking of the number 11, it says the average person discovers their quote-unquote favorite candy for the rest of their life at the age of 11. Do you guys have one?
Interesting.
Snickers.
Really?
M&M's is a close second.
Okay.
M&M's is a close second.
Gross?
Very close second.
Yeah, I'm M&M's. I've been eating the chocolate caramel filled chocolates from Ghirardelli's that I could get at the local supermarket lately. But M&M's, they got to be in the refrigerator for me. They got to be cold M&M's. I can't just eat them right out of the bag like that. They got to be cold and ready to go. And I can't top what I just saw on the screen. So it looks like we're getting ready to pivot. We're pivoting away from Easter candy, Sean Cressman, and we're getting ready to do dad jokes live from Houston, Texas.
Yeah, our guy just put his glasses on. So that wraps up Pump the Brakes. But you know how this works? We move on to dad jokes to wrap things up. B-Train's going to supply the dad joke. He just put on the specs to read said joke tonight. For those that are not watching this version of the program. Either way, he's going to get one of these. Now, after the joke, if it's a quality dad joke, he's going to get it. If it's above and beyond, and it's one we're all going to tell our friends, with the standing O, but there's that chance, or it just doesn't land, and you get one of those. So that's your grading system. B-Train, take it away.
All right, here we go. You know what? I started an argument on the elevator with my girl. Come to find out, I was just wrong on so many levels.
There you go. Rebounded nicely.
That delivery was smooth, man. Like that might have been the difference maker.
Rebounded nicely. I like it. That's a good one. That's good.
That's how we end every
just
edition.
Just cheesy enough. Delivered nicely. That was good. Nice bounce back.
Absolutely. That's how we end every edition of Training Gross Dad Jokes, courtesy of Bertrand Berry. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, follow us on Twitter @Training Gross. We'll see you next time.
Well, holla.